Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fabric Executive Briefings. I'm your host, Patrick LeBlanc, and today I have Sanjeev. Sanjeev, before we get into this stuff, why don't you tell the people who you are and what you do?
All right. Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be at this event. My name is Sanjeev Mohan. I am a former Gartner analyst. I left about 4 years ago to start my own advisory firm. Now I work with a lot of hyperscalers, mega vendors, all in the data and AI space. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So I'm showing my age.
Yeah,
So
it's okay.
And I have a book coming out this summer. It's on Amazon.com right now. It's called Designing AI-Driven Data Foundations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You and I have been doing this a long time. 1900s, probably.
I started in 1883.
1883.
Yeah.
All right.
Because
1800s.
that was in the keynote. There was one choice.
That's right.
When
When SQL Server.
SQL Server came out, that was the first choice. So I'm sticking to it.
So you've seen lots and lots of technology and platform shifts.
Yeah.
What do you think about this new wave of AI? How is it going to be different? And what can we expect? What do you think?
So like you said, there have been a lot of technology shifts in the past, and we've lived through a lot of them. Some came even before us. But this is the first time we see a technology that's very cognitive. So it affects humans much more than the previous ones, which were more mechanical, starting all the way from Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So when it's cognitive, then it starts threatening the work that humans do, because it has a ability to reason, plan, think, and act on our behalf.
So I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Every one of us probably thought about this. AI replacing
Yep.
what I do. I don't think it can replace me, but it may, right? And so why do you think this is the best time to be alive and part of all this?
100%.
Okay.
This is the golden era of data. And AI is actually a use case of, so I tell people, for example, last week I was at my alma mater, Gartner Data and Analytics Summit. People were asking me, how do I go from data governance to AI governance?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's wrong language, because we're not going from data to AI. They're part and parcel of the same thing. We're upskilling. So to answer your question about job loss, we've always said every new technology causes disruption, jobs are lost, new jobs are created. Now, when you say this for AI, the problem is that people say, wait, but AI is different, because you just said it's cognitive, right? So how can the same rules apply? But I mark my words, in a few years, right now we're going through very initial disruption. All our jobs will change, but they'll change for better. There has never been a better time for anyone to create new innovative ideas.
Yeah.
You could be in marketing, you could be in supply chain, and you can now create your own application.
You can quickly too, quickly.
Yeah.
But so that's great. But you say something about data, right? This is the time to really be in data. And in the keynote this morning, they talked about this thing called an ontology. Right?
Yep.
And so we're adding these relationships, we're adding context. How does that help? How does that change things?
So the hottest buzzword these days, or hype, is context graphs. So context graphs hit LinkedIn earlier this year, and I made a prediction. I said it's a bipolar prediction. Okay. Context is really important, but we will waste a lot of time talking about context graphs. And by the way, my predictions already come true. So why is it important? The thing is that AI has amazing ability to infer relationships from a very messy data.
Yes, it does, right?
It's trained on the internet, so there's no structure. So first of all, the data we're talking about is structured and unstructured.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. But it does not know anything about my personal enterprise data.
Yeah.
For that, I need some ontology, some context. The problem is that we are treating context as something brand new, as if like something we just thought of.
But you always need it.
Yeah, we've always had context.
Yeah.
It was semantics. business glossary, a catalog. So now what we are saying is that we have semantics that translate technical terminology into business meanings, rules, KPIs, all kinds of business terms.
Yeah.
Why don't I extend it and get semantics from all the third-party products that I am also going to work about? For example, let's say I'm building an app and I have semantics from my internal sites. But what about weblogs where people are shopping?
It's true.
What about all the Twitter X content where the sentiments are being captured?
Yeah.
If I can bring those signals,
Man,
that's
different.
That's different. That's what we call context.
Yeah.
So if I may just to clarify, because there's so much confusion, semantics are the meaning. If you add the situational awareness of why somebody is doing something, that is context.
So you keep saying context, and I'm trying not to go here.
Okay.
MCP.
Sorry?
MCP.
Okay.
Model Context
Yes.
Protocol.
So MCP also got overblown.
I did. I think it did. I agree with you.
So MCP is literally a standard for interface for agents to reach out to tools.
Yes.
But when MCP first came out, Anthropic came out with MCP, there was no security.
None.
So imagine that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we are adding OAuth and we're adding all of these new must-have, but still we expect MCP to be the magic bullet. And it's not. Already we are starting to see Anthropic is very deep into skills. Because they're saying skills is where you define how a role, a persona does their workflows.
Yeah.
Now so you define it in English in a markdown file, and then now that you have to reach out to the tools, you use MCP for that.
Yeah. But how do the skills and progressively all these loaded capabilities, how do they impact the scale and the governance of for these agents and for these protocols?
So very interesting thing has happened with governance. If we go back to data governance, what did we govern? We governed the input.
Well, we didn't govern anything.
Actually, we didn't govern anything. You're absolutely right, but we tried.
We tried.
So what we tried to govern the input, because the whole idea was if you can have good data quality, data discovery, profiling, lineage in the input to your applications, then applications being deterministic, it will always give you the same answer. But with AI, because it's probabilistic, so the output can still change, which means you have to now govern the input and the output.
Yes.
And not only do you have to govern the output, you have to govern it over and over. Because one day I can ask a question and I can get a certain answer. The very next day, same data, same question, I can get a very different answer.
Yeah.
So you have to do constant monitoring, evaluation, reinforcement learning. And these are the hottest topics.
Very hard. So let me ask you a question. So what does move the question to the data, not the data to the question, mean in practice? I know I'm switching a little bit, but this is a good one.
So this is the new thinking.
Yes.
In the old world, traditional world, ETL.
Yes.
What did we do? So actually, if you step back and see how much disservice we have done. I have an operation database, and I spent decades doing ERD diagrams on it. I have a third normal form, data model, all my primary key, foreign key, relationships, one-to-one, one-to-many, all done.
Yes.
Then I extract it into a data lake. All that is gone.
All of it's gone.
So then from the bronze layer, I then start rebuilding my relationships. And then I have my gold layer, and now I can do my reports.
Yeah.
So bring your questions to data. What we are saying is that why don't we, instead of moving the data, we start thinking about moving the metadata. So syncing the metadata. I have a perfect example for that.
Okay.
Microsoft Fabric and SAP. the business data cloud integration, what it does is it syncs the metadata catalog of SAP with OneLake catalog. So it's zero copy of data.
Sure.
Now I can run my analytics in Microsoft Fabric, look at the data which is in SAP. So the questions are going to the data. The data is not moving necessarily to my destination.
Yeah.
So this zero copy is really important because A, I can now decrease the latency of data movement. B, I can reduce security because no one wants their data to leave their perimeter and go
They
elsewhere.
don't want it to leave.
I can reduce the workload and skills I need to do this complicated data engineering task.
Wow.
So this is how we should be thinking. Minimize your data movement.
So it completely changes the way we think about data movement and cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Even in Microsoft Fabric. So you know how much we've talked about mirroring and
Yes,
shortcuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I love them, by the way.
Yes, I you should.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when the customer says, I want to mirror a data source to OneLake, behind the scenes, Microsoft is deciding that, you know what, shortcut will work here. Let's not move data.
And let's not move it. Let's
Yeah.
leave it where it is. Let's just
Right.
point to it.
Yeah. And the beauty of all this is the user does not need to know the nitty-gritty details.
Who cares?
So yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I should not have to say, oh, let me go to this source. And if I'm a business person,
Sure.
for me, I need to be able to discover what data I have, which is through a catalog.
Yeah.
Where it sources from, the origination should not be my problem.
Okay. So now we're talking about the data. Now we're getting to the right. So we're seeing BI meet natural language. Like
Yeah.
they're meeting up.
Yeah.
They're becoming best friends in this
Yes.
world, right?
Yeah.
And so, and data ops,
Yes.
and ML ops, and LLM ops,
Right.
converge. What does that mean for data teams? So what does that mean for all of us?
Okay. So the OG BI product of modern times was Tableau. Where is Tableau? So, you know.
It doesn't exist anymore. I kid.
Okay. So where I'm going with this is there was a little bit of context switching that we had to do between the operational systems where I spend all my time and the BI tool. So as a result, the space of BI has not really advanced very much, to be honest.
Sure. I
All
agree.
the way from business object days, which is 1990s.
I agree.
And the adoption of business intelligence, BI, has only been 25% within an organization. So where we are going now is we are bringing BI to where we actually work. So we are embedding analytics into even SaaS tools.
Wow.
And by the way, this is not just for BI. It is same as for data catalogs. Data catalogs have also not been very successful because why would I go to SharePoint to do my cataloging when I'm working the whole time in my SaaS application? So bringing data ops, data catalog, all into the place where I work.
Yeah.
Like just this morning, I was thinking about it. I heard how Azure monitor data is now in OneLake. Yeah. Again, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
If I have to ask an SRE for monitoring data, telemetry data, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But if that data is available where I'm doing my day-to-day work, then I can use that data.
Wow. So I got so many great questions, and I wish I could talk to you all day for hours and hours and hours, but I'm going to end with this. If you were building something from scratch today, just you had a blank canvas, right? Yeah. You can paint whatever you want. What's the one principle you wouldn't compromise on?
I would compromise or not?
You would not.
Not. Okay. Time and again, the technology that succeeds is the one that humans understand the most.
Okay.
For example, the whole idea of markup languages already existed in Unix. Does anyone know SGML and so these archaic markup languages? Extremely difficult. LaTeX, there were all these languages. HTML came out, mass adoption.
Mass.
So the number one principle I would not compromise on is user experience. Anything that's easy, gets adopted.
Wow. Wow.
Even cell phones, like if you look at iPhone,
Yeah,
for example,
it just works.
Yeah, it
It
just
just
works.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why AI is so impactful, because it's all natural language.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, Sanjeev, thank you so much for
My
taking
pleasure.
time out of your busy day. And thank you all. And thank everybody for watching. And we'll see you next time.
What a conversation. Everything you've been watching here was captured live at FabCon and SequelCon in Atlanta, from the interviews to the demos to the community insights that make these events so special. If you're into Microsoft Fabric, SQL, and the future of data, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And speaking of next, we're taking this show to Barcelona. FabCon and SequelCon Barcelona are happening this September 2026, and it's going to be packed with big announcements, deep technical sessions, and one amazing global data community. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to register and use code FABTV to save 200 euros off your ticket. As always, thank you so much for watching. Keep being awesome, and we'll see you in the next one.